the CEO of Yorkshire Dance, and we, as Simone just said, we champion the development and the value of dance. And we do so by working with artists, by getting new communities and new people involved with dance and spreading the love, and by supporting the dance sector to really flourish. And we've just started a 2-year project. It's our first international EU project, and it's called Performing Gender, with 5 international partners. And in that project, dance, gender and activism are central themes, and they're also really central themes to me personally and professionally, which is why I'm talking about them today. When I say dance, I wonder whether we could just close our eyes for a minute. Don't fall asleep, you just ate your lunch. And whether you can check with yourself, if you think of dance, what feelings that conjures up on your body. Does that feel kind of exciting and joyful and a bit like anticipation? Or do you feel slightly uncomfortable and nervous, filled with anxiety? Perhaps you got told as a child you were the wrong body shape for dance, or maybe you just feel like you have 2 left feet, or you have all these different experiences as a child, as an adult, that have contributed to your relationship with dance. And I'm interested how that informs your relationship with your body. Now, if you open your eyes again, let's talk about dance performance. I hesitate to guess that if we think about dance performance, most of us will see ballet, ballroom dancing, perhaps some of you will think of musical theatre or commercial dance, Britain's Got Talent. Maybe some of you will even think of African dance or South Asian dance forms. But I guess most of us will think of really beautiful, slim bodies, young bodies, doing highly athletic, extraordinary things that most of us wouldn't even dream of doing. And that most of those things in context have either to do with love and romance, or with courtship, or somehow to do with sexual attraction. And I hesitate to guess also that either that image of dance performance or your feelings in your own body have very little to do or do not challenge our prevailing social norms around gender or, for example, age. And why? And this is where the activism comes in. Why is that? Why does dance in our society concern itself with such a tiny aspect of the moving body and with such an extremely prescribed body type? And why does dance on the professional stage still often exclude the elderly body or the disabled body? And why are many of us women walking around with notions of elegance and grace and poise when dance could encompass all of human expression and experience? Does dance have to be an inherently feminizing activity? A little bit about the impact of dance. There are countless moving examples, you might have many of them yourself, of amateur dancers who report a sense of liberation, a sense of freedom when you're dancing, of being connected to something bigger than yourself, of losing yourself, of a new friendship and social groups, and being part of something bigger, but also of a spiritual experience of connecting to something beyond yourself. We know that if teachers introduce dance, struggling pupils will completely transform, and that dance can even help with teaching maths or other subjects. And recently at Yorkshire Dance, we did a research project where we worked on fall prevention. We do a lot of work on fall prevention with people in their 60s, 70s and 80s. And obviously this costs the National Health Service a lot of money. When you lose your core stability, you fall over and you break your hip. So what we found out is that if you only do dance twice a week for 10 weeks, that the average falling age of the group can be reduced by 15 years. I think that's quite extraordinary. But why does any of that really matter? And why really in the bigger scheme of things? Well, one of the best articulations to that, I still think, lies in one of the most popular TED Talks ever by Sir Ken Robinson in 2006, called Do Schools Kill Creativity? Now, this talk has been viewed 45 million times. And I'm sure you have watched it as well, but very briefly, he argues we absolutely have to shift our attitudes towards education if we want to develop and not stifle creativity in order to truly equip the next generation to deal with some of the huge problems that we face. Haven't those problems got a lot worse in the last 11 years? Climate change, terrorism, inequality, poverty, the rise of populism. Ken challenges our prevailing emphasis on real learning as something that only happens in our head, as opposed to something more holistic. And he asks why dance should come at the very bottom of the educational hierarchy in our system. And yet, in the 11 years since that talk, it has got so much worse for the arts in schools and for dance, and there has been a drastic drop-off in arts and dance subjects in Britain over the last few years. I'm going to sidestep to the matter of gender, our understanding of masculinity and femininity. I'm pretty sure that you are not attending, that if you're attending today, you don't think that matters of gender are only of interest to people in the LGBTQI community. Gender affects us all. However, I wonder how aware we all are at how deep-seated our own binary thinking of male and female is, and at all the cliches that are associated with our own how our own brains are supposed to work and what we are supposed to be good at. Multitasking and reverse parking being some of the issues. So I don't know about you whether you have children, but I try to buy sort of active shoes for my 3-year-old. And I have, if I'm lucky, one option of a trainer, and it's bright pink, sparkly, and it's princess themed. Whereas if I go over to the boys section, I have lots of choice. And don't get me started on toothpaste or toothbrushes. Our kids' worlds are so gendered that I seriously cannot buy a non-gendered toothbrush for my 3-year-old. So, and I wonder how much that is affecting us all the time, and how much of that seeps into our subconscious and even into our bodies on a cellular level. And I'm wondering that because of a personal experience. Because I grew up in the 1980s in Holland, when I went to secondary schools, where it was absolutely fine, ostensibly, to be gay. My teachers were out and gay at school, unthinkable at the time in Britain, but in Holland, that was fine. We knew of their boyfriends and their girlfriends. My mother was a feminist. I was raised in the diet of Germaine Greer and what have you, and I thought I'm a feminist and I'm not homophobic. And I didn't realize until my late 30s how much homophobia I had internalized of stuff that was, of course, around me. Again, why does that matter? Well, the suicide rate amongst young men are really high, and amongst young trans people, much higher. There's a huge prevalence of bullying in our schools and on social media, and the miserableness of our teenagers in the UK is profound. We apparently have the most miserable teenagers or children from anywhere else in Europe. And wouldn't we all be happier if we could adopt a more fluid approach to gender, and if we were all more aware? A Facebook friend of mine recently posted she organised a children's party for her 4-year-old in a soft play area. And for the lunch, there was set out the number of boys on one side with pirate hats and the number of girls on the other side with tiaras. And she was very cross, first of all, because they were separated. Secondly, because they couldn't have a choice about whether they wanted to wear a pirate hat or a tiara, either way. But thirdly, because she didn't do anything, and she didn't pull up all the other parents or the soft play centre at this event. She didn't say anything. And I had to do a driving course recently, a speed awareness course. I'm fessing up. I was the last person in the room. All the other 20 adults were seated. I didn't know any of them. And I had to produce my driving license for the male instructor. This is a prerequisite for the course. He looked at my picture on my driving license, looked me up and down and said, "Oh, that's a pretty picture. You're wearing lipstick. Why aren't you wearing lipstick today?" And then I had to sit and listen to him for 3 hours, and I was so dumbfounded at the sexism, which I don't often have anymore, this sort of blatant sexism, and I was speechless, and I sat down seething, and and what I was aware physically, that I had opened a little box of experiences that came flooding back to me, of memories of being uncomfortable and objectified as a girl and as a young woman. And again, I didn't pull him up on it on the day, and I have not complained to Kirklees Council, who run these courses, since. But I'm talking about it now. So, I'm finishing soon. My life has not been on the barricades. My life has benefited from people who have fought the fight for me. I've been in lesbian relationships for most of my life, and we recently adopted our own little daughter. And of course, that's brilliant. In Leeds, there's lots of gay adopters. Wherever you go to information evenings or training courses, you meet lots of other gay people there. Apparently, we're brilliant. So this leads to the end. I want to bring the topics of dance and gender together. I think dance is a brilliant way to challenge, subvert, question, and provoke our understanding of gender because it uses the human body. In the project that we'll be doing, we'll be building the skills and capacities of artists to deal with these topics, and also we'll be able to bring local communities involved with it and start the dialogue and continue that dialogue. So I conclude with a call to action to myself and to you. Let's get out of our heads and into our bodies. Let's dance and let's spread the love of dance. Let's expand our ideas of what dance is, who can dance, and where dance happens. And let's become more aware of all the tiny, minuscule things we do each day that are rooted in our cultural norms, assumptions, and prejudices around gender, and stop perpetuating harmful, limiting, binary thinking. Thank you very much.